In Chords Part 1, we looked at how we could just add a C major chord to a project in Soundtrap. And today we're going to look at how we can add in other chords to create a chord progression or a chord pattern. So let's enter the studio, click on the Music tab. And just to say that I'm using the browser Chrome, which is possibly the best choice for using Soundtrap. But some may say otherwise, but that's the browser that I'm using. And I've selected an instrument, and I'm going to just go through these different keyboard piano instruments and see which one I fancy using today. And for each piano you click on it, and you can then listen to what it sounds like. And there's enough in there to give us something to play around with. Let's go for this Rhodes sound. Now let's go up to the main kind of project window here, and you'll see as I go to my Rhodes has been created, and on my track I'm going to click on this plus, and what this does is it creates a little region for us to fill, and this region is 1 bar long. Now I'm now going to go down to my piano roll, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to give me a little bit more space. But this is still 1 bar, and hopefully you can see, and it'll be easier for you to see on your screen, the bar is split into beats. And we're going to work in G major today, so I'm going to start with a G major chord. So I'm going to get my pencil from over here, which I've already got selected. It may already be selected for you. And I'm going to click in here, G, B, D. That is a G chord. Now, if you're not sure what G major is and what notes are in a G chord, then I will be sharing those on this video, but you can always pause it and go away and have a listen or a watch or find a way of learning these notes and these chords. Now, actually, I want this chord to be longer, so I'm going to select my arrow again, and I'm going to drag over here, and then I'm just going to, on any one of these notes, I'm going to drag it out like that. And what I then want to do is I actually want to have this G chord happen on the first beat of the bar and the third beat of the bar. So I'm going to select them all, hold down the Alt key, and then drag them all there. So I've got a chord on the first beat of the bar and the third beat of the bar. So that's my first chord. And what you might want to do in your chord progression is have that happen 4 times or 8 times. That's up to you, and we'll talk about that later. But what we're going to do now is create another region. So I'm going to move up here again to my instrument where I'm gathering all of my ideas, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a region. And just while I've got this right click menu open, you can see some of the shortcuts that you might want to get familiar with as you use Soundtrap. So let's create the region. Again, we've got another bar down here. Click on my pencil, and now I'm going to put in a D major chord, which is chord 5 in G major. G, A, B, C, D, chord number 5. So let's put a D, an F sharp. Now, don't be thrown by the fact that it says G flat. G flat and F sharp are the same note in one sense. I won't go too much into that, but just know that G flat and F sharp certainly share a key on the piano, is maybe an easy way of putting it. And so that's our D major chord. Now, you may notice that I've done this a bit lower, and it's really up to you where you put your chords. If I wanted to, I could highlight this, and I could move it up to a higher version of the chord. Or, if you're familiar with chord inversions, I could take this A and I could put it lower, just like that. Chord inversions mean that we don't have the root of the chord or the note that gives the chord its name. So in this sense, the D, if we have the D as the lowest note, we call it root position. I won't go into that in too much detail now, because you can just play around. As long as you've got a D, an A, and an F sharp, then you've got a D major chord. So I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to highlight them. I'm going to Alt, click, and drag. And now I've got my 2 D chords. Now I'm going to go back up here to my track, right click, create a region. And now I'm going to put in an E minor chord. An E minor chord, which is an E, a G, and a B. So I'm going to find my E, And again, it can be get a little bit tricky to find where they are, but you'll get used to seeing where these chords go. E, G, B. This is my E minor chord. But again, I'm going to actually move this E up to the top there and create a slightly different inversion. And the beauty of using Soundtrap and any piece of music software is that you can change things as you go, and you can edit things, and you don't need to be worried about things that you put in. You can come back to them later and change them around. Final chord up here, right click, create region. I'm going to put in a C major chord. So let's find our C, and along here, C, E, G. And I'm going to just leave it like that, get my arrow, and copy it there. So let's go back to the beginning, double click on the enter. Now, one of the most important things about composition is listening and thinking about what it is that you want to create. And obviously, if you're following along with this tutorial, you're probably just going to copy this and put these notes in. But it's really important that, first of all, you understand what you're putting in, and secondly, that you make it your own. If you don't like the instrument I've chosen, choose another one. If you don't like the pitch of the chords, then change them. If you don't like the inversions, then change them. So I might say, well, actually, I want to move this G up to the top of the chord. And then you listen to it, you review it, you edit it. And that's really important. As we move through these tutorials, there's something that you don't like, then change it. And the other beauty is that now that we've got these chords, we can, and it's quite a good idea to zoom out, we can decide, well, actually, let's move them along a bit. So you need to keep track of what you've got. This is my C major chord. This is my E minor chord. This is my D chord. But actually, if we want to have another bar of G, then we can just click on the kind of circle arrow here and just drag it out. So I've got 2 bars of G now, and then I'm going to have 2 bars of D, and then 2 bars of E minor, and then 2 bars of C. And that's the great thing about these regions, is that we can drag them out and copy them. And this pattern that we've created uses chord 1, G major, then chord 5, D major, then chord 6, E minor, and then chord 4, which is C major. I sometimes refer to this as 1564, just as a way of remembering it. And this chord progression is used in a great number of different genres and styles of music, but it's a very commonly referred to as a 4-chord song. And a lot of modern pop and rock songs will use these 4 chords. Sometimes they'll use them in different orders, sometimes they won't use all 4 of them. But it's really good to familiarize yourself with these chords. And so in part 1, we looked at just adding a single chord and changing the rhythms. And in part 2, we've looked at adding 4 chords. And now you can combine what you learned in part 1. And actually, if you want to, you could change the rhythms around of these chords. You could change the pattern. So if we go to, let's go to our D chord, what we might decide is that we want to change how these chords are played. And you'll notice when I change one region, it changes the region where that we copied. So you can see that I'm just dragging these. And what you might want to do is have the chords happen a bit like this. Let's just have a listen to that D major. Listen to the change. And of course, if you want to just have one of the regions do something, well, then you'd need to create a new region. But what you can do is you can actually, and if you remember those shortcuts, you can actually separate these regions and split them. And you can edit them in a number of ways, should you wish. But if you wanted to say have one of these bars of E minor doing these kind of long chords and then one doing the shorter rhythms, then you can easily just create a new region by right-clicking, adding in a region, and then creating what you want. But I just wanted to show you how we can bring together the ideas in part 1 and part 2 and actually make your chord progression slightly more rhythmical and interesting. And of course we can just delete things and change things as we go. And don't forget what I mentioned about chord inversions and how we can change, well, what's the lowest note in our chord? And so if it's a G major chord, if our lowest note is the G, then we say that's in root position. If the lowest note is the B, the middle note in the chord, then we say that that's in first inversion. And then if the lowest note is a D, then we'd say that's in second inversion. And this is just where we change around the pitch of the notes within the chord. It's still the same chord, but it's just got a different chord inversion. So I hope you enjoy using Soundtrap to create this 4-chord progression. And then once you've created that, we'll be able to build on that in later tutorials. All the best with creating your first 4-chord progression.